Welcome back to Racing Across America. As promised before the break, really happy to be joined by Donna Brothers from NBC, Starlight Ladies Racing, and much more. Good morning, Donna.
Good morning, Seth. Good to be here.
Absolutely happy to have you here. And, you know, your work with NBC, it seems like they've been kind of doing yeoman's and ramped up work on horse racing over the past couple of seasons. And certainly the timing was right as they get in and start to ramp up their coverage, which has been great. Triple Crown, Breeders' Cup, and more. But then luck into a Triple Crown this year. Everybody there has to be thrilled.
Yeah, I mean, we've covered the Triple Crown races since 2001, but we've also been doing more coverage, as you point out, in between, like Road to the Breeders' Cup and things like that. So this is a wonderful year to have the Road to the Breeders' Cup shows. And I say that because next year we won't have so many because it's an Olympics year. So there's a lot of Olympics on NBC Sports next year. So it's great that NBC has decided anytime they can fit it in and the horse racing people want them there, they're there because it enhances what we do for the Breeders' Cup coverage and certainly for the Triple Crown.
Yeah, and it has been great coverage and extended, as you say, and we've certainly enjoyed it. Belmont Stakes, I've asked everybody who's come on the set this month. I was down there for the Belmont Stakes as a horse racing fan. It was just phenomenal. I showed the other day when I had Chris Kay on the little video I took as they crossed the finish line and turned my camera around. And young, old, men, women, jumping, hugging, drinks in the air. Give us your impressions of the Belmont Stakes and about halfway down the stretch when the crowd just erupted.
Well, for me, I was on a horse, as you well know, but to explain to the viewers, so I'm on the horse, I'm on the clubhouse turn, so I can't see the race at all. And I had a fleeting moment of, oh no, he's going to get beat, when I heard Larry Colmus say, and then Frosted races up into second or whatever he said, and then just a moment later he said, and American Pharoah kicks away or something. And so I was like, okay, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And there was like this fleeting moment where when he crossed the wire, where I wanted to have an emotional reaction that everybody who was watching or there had, but I realized that I have a job and I could get fired if I allow that emotional reaction. So, I stayed in the moment and thought about, okay, I mean, obviously I'd already planned the 3 questions that I would specifically ask Victor if he won, but I also had planned questions I would ask if he got beat. So luckily I got to go with the plan A questions, but the crowd noise was so loud. I used double earpieces for that show just because I knew it would be crazy. But the crowd noise was so loud that when Tom Hammond threw to me, the crowd was being picked up through his microphone. And I couldn't hear his toss to me twice. And then finally the producer threw it to me, and I could hear that. And when I went back and watched the replay, I was like, wow. I mean, you could hear Tom Hammond throw it to me twice, and I've got nothing. So that's how loud the crowd noise was, that just still coming through his microphone. And we're talking a minute after the race, the crowd was still that loud.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Pretty amazing.
It was a fun racetrack moment.
Yeah.
And I pulled up last night your really nice article you wrote for the New York Times, holding back tears after American Pharoah's Triple Crown. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so right after the race, there was this family on the outside fence. It was a Latino family. It was a mother, a mother, a husband, and 3 kids, I'd say ages 7 to 12. And as soon as the horses crossed the wire, the woman was screaming to me like, did he win? Did he win? And I could hear her even through my double earpieces. And so finally I looked at her and said, yes, he won. And as soon as I said that, the whole family burst into like this cheer, and immediately they were crying. And I was like, oh my God, I can't even look at them. Because of course I was already trying to hold back this emotion. And so, yeah, it was an emotion that was there, but I had to hold it back. And then the next morning, the long day, you do all the things after the race. We did some post-race coverage from the test barn that I covered, and had dinner at the hotel. And the next morning I got out of the shower and I thought, oh my God, it happened. The Triple Crown happened, and I just burst into tears. And finally I was like, oh, good, this is what I've been wanting to feel. So.
Yeah, I think that was the emotion a lot of people had. As I say, I took the pictures, and there was screaming and drinks going up in the air, and I talked to a lot of people later who were sitting up in the grandstand or the clubhouse who said, man, people around me were crying and hugging, and it was great, and it's continued, and that's part of the fun of it. And we have some video here of his win in the Haskell. American Pharoah is going to be the number 4 horse. Keen Ice makes a little bit of a late run. Both of those back on Saturday. What were your thoughts coming out of the Haskell, his first race back after the Belmont Stakes?
Well, I went by the barn this morning. I talked to Jimmy Barnes and asked him how he's kept his weight. When I talked to him at the Haskell Stakes, you can see him here winning this race as easily as he can. But when I talked to Jimmy before this race, he said that American Pharoah's consistently kept his weight between 1,160 pounds and 1,185 pounds, which for a person, that's like a couple of pound weight differential. So that's pretty amazing. I mean, to keep that kind of weight through the entire Triple Crown. And then I asked him this morning, how's his weight? And he said he was 1164 before the Haskell, and he was 1184 today. He said, now these are two different scales, so they could be off by 5 or 10 pounds, which for us, we get on the people scales, and they're off by half a pound, a pound. But still, obviously, he's doing really well, and what an amazing performance we just saw, right?
Incredible, and we're looking for more of the same on Saturday, certainly, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second and your thoughts there. But before we do it, obviously, the potential is there that American Pharoah brought some new fans to the table, some new folks plugged into NBC, and certainly you don't go through your bio with every NBC broadcast. So for folks who maybe aren't familiar, talk a little bit about your horse racing background.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been around for a while. My mother was a jockey. My brother and my sister were both jockeys. And so it was probably a pretty natural progression for me to become a jockey. I did that until 1998. I retired in 98 as the second leading female rider in the nation by money earned. And the only reason why I throw that out there is because I'd had some success, and it put me in a position to be in front of the camera quite a bit as a jockey. And so I guess when I retired, it wasn't an unnatural position that they asked me to do some horse racing coverage. First of all, at the fairgrounds with Brian Krantz. I did winning interviews after the stakes races. Then I went to Churchill Downs. We went back there. I married trainer Frank Brothers, who trained at the time in 1998 when I retired from riding. So then we went back to Churchill Downs in the spring. I started doing the coverage there, and it was there doing the coverage with Mike Battaglia that NBC saw me when they came in to observe for the Derby. They asked me if I wanted to join their horse racing broadcast coverage, and of course I said yes. And then I started doing some work too for TVG. At this point, I cover all the horse races for NBC. If they have horse shows on NBC, I'm usually there. I'll go to Geneva in December and cover a show jumping event there. I've covered the last 3 years. And for TVG, all I cover is the Keeneland Spring and Fall meet. I'm the only broadcaster, I think, for TVG that is not staff. So I'm sort of an opportunist with TVG. So when they come to town, I live in Louisville, and we just cover the Keeneland meet Spring and Fall, which is a great gig for me. So I've been doing the NBC coverage now since 2000.
Well, you do a great job, and
you.
you're a natural. And I want to ask...
I'm not a natural, I assure you.
I want to ask a nuts and bolts question, though, because I always wonder this. Do you bring your own horse to various venues, or do you pick up a horse at that venue? And for what you do, you need a horse clearly with a certain temperament, because you got to ride along as you interview the jockey. So if you pick them up at the venue, do you have to go out and kind of practice and figure out, oh, this one will work or this one won't work?
Yeah, so I don't have a horse. I can't bring a horse. And yeah, I get a different horse everywhere I go. And what's happened is over the years, I have contacts I call. When I go to Monmouth, there's a rider there named Debbie Andrews, who always has a good horse for me to ride. When I come here, Abigail Adsit, who's a trainer here in New York.
We had her on earlier.
Yeah, she's got a pony named Tucker, and I'll ride Tucker here in New York. We've got a special scenario for this coming weekend because I didn't anticipate that Baffert was going to bring Smokey the Pony in with American Pharoah, because they didn't bring Smokey in for the Haskell. So I had already lined up Tucker. And then I just talked to Jimmy Barnes this morning. He said, Smokey's here. Bob said you can ride him on Saturday. And I said, well, we've got a little situation. NBC gives me money to pay the people whose horse I use, and I had already paid Abby yesterday for the horse, and Jimmy's so nice. He said, why don't you, because I'll use Tucker, Abby's horse, tomorrow just to make sure my equipment works on the track from every point. He said, why don't you use Tucker tomorrow, let them keep all the money, and you can just use Smokey on Saturday. So that's what we're going to do this weekend, and I'll be riding Smokey the pony, who is Bob Baffert's pony. And if you want to follow him on Twitter, he now has his own Twitter account at Smokey the Pony.
Yeah. Everybody has their own Twitter,
right?
Except for me. I'm the only one without a Twitter account. Even the horses have their own
get
Twitter.
In the game.
I know.
Come on.
Serling's been saying that to me. He says, I'm living in the past, but we'll see. Maybe I'll plug in before
We'll drag you into the future.
Yeah. All right, let's get some thoughts on the racing. We talked before you went on the air. You guys will be covering Forgo, Sword Dancer, and Travers on Saturday. Why don't we start out with the big race and get some of your thoughts on the Travers. While we do that, I mean, we've already taken a look at the Haskell, so clearly, the race goes through American Pharoah, but coming out of the Jim Dandy, Texas Red, and Frosted. Talked with Karen McLaughlin here last week. I didn't realize that Frosted lost a shoe at the beginning of the race. That was intriguing to me. And I think Smart Transition coming out of the Curlin is perhaps a little bit interesting for John Sheriffs. But what are your thoughts on the Travers?
Well, I have a question for you. Who goes with American Pharoah?
Well,
Do you see anybody
that
here?
is the question. Yeah,
Right.
I think. And people asked me after the draw. I was at the draw on Tuesday night, and as I came out, just walking down Broad, that's the great thing about Saratoga.
Yeah.
Just people recognizing from TV. So what did he get? I said 2. Is that good or bad? I said, well,
Doesn't-
normally maybe it's not great, but
Yeah.
with him, I think he's just going to be sent, and nobody's going to be near him.
There's nobody who can get near him in here, Seth. Texas Red, when he won the Jim Dandy here, the next day Kent DeSormo came to ride Keen Ice in the Haskell, and I complimented Kent on the ride that he had given Texas Red in this race because of the fact that he really took the race there was not much speed in there, so he's laying second. He put himself in such a good position, and he said to me, thank you for the compliment for one, but he said, I just rode Texas Red the way I always ride him. He said, if they're going to go 46 and change for the half, we're going to be 8 lengths back. If they're going to go 48 for the half, we're going to be a length back. American Pharoah is not going to go 48 for the half, so we have to imagine that the slowest half he's possibly going to go is 47. So that's still going to put Keen Ice Texas Red 7 lengths back, and he's got the most speed in the race besides American Pharoah. So, I mean, I just can't see a scenario in which if American Pharoah shows up and runs his race, he gets beat. So the only thing I think you can do with him is single him in your pick force. That's all I think you can. That's the only way I think you can make money is he gives you a single on the card. But my opinion. I
was on television, one of the local channels, the past couple of days. They said, how do you make money? What do you do? I said, buy an American Pharoah ticket and go to eBay. That could be your best way to make some money with American Pharoah, because I agree. It just seems like, he seems like he's the best of the 3-year-old class, and pace-wise, it seems like he has this field over a barrel.
Absolutely.
So we'll
and
see.
I think it's one of the reasons Baffert came. Not only did he want to see how American Pharoah was doing, he wanted to see who went into the race, and it sets up perfectly.
Yeah, and the upstart people who maybe potentially has a little bit of early speed there, I think they're kind of on the fence of whether they're going to go.
Yeah, they're still talking about Parks as a possibility, and maybe the one post might have edged him towards Parks. Who knows?
And again, he scratches, then American Pharoah moves into the 1, but I think with his speed, it's just not going to.
And as you know, a lot of times here, when they do scratch, they'll leave the 1 post position open. Yeah. So he's not going to be up against the rail no matter what. So it'll still be it doesn't matter where he breaks from. If he runs his race, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. First time in, I don't know how many years, since Whirl Away, that a Triple Crown winner will come and win the Travers. And it's also interesting, I said earlier, we have to come up with
1941 was Whirl Away, by the way, that many years.
Yeah, I was here for Affirmed, who came under the finish line first, but did get DQ'd behind Aladar.
Yeah, I hope you weren't here in 1941.
No, 41 I missed. 41 I just missed. But it's also exciting this year because we've got to come up with a new name. There's the Triple Crown, but there's never been the opportunity before for a Triple Crown winner to get the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Yeah, and I'm glad you put it that way, because I think so many people have said no Triple Crown winner has ever won the Breeders' Cup Classic. Well, since the Breeders' Cup Classic started in 1984, and prior to that it was 78, there was no opportunity. But it's still, pretty amazing that this horse is in a position to do things that he's definitely going to have made a legacy. I mean, he'll be one of those horses that we get to say, I was there when, and I saw, and
People are already doing it about the Belmont Stakes.
Yeah.
People are already saying I was there that day because it was phenomenal, incredible. And they have linked it up to Rachel Alexandra up here in the Woodward, which was a good comparison because I was here that day too. And it's just as a racing fan, the hair stands up on the back of your neck at both of those.
Yeah, and for the record, I didn't cover that race, but I was here when Rachel Alexandra won the Woodward, and I was crying.
Yeah.
So.
It was that kind of an event.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the couple other stakes you guys will cover on Saturday. The Sword Dancer, 1.5 miles on the grass, and this is a fun field. You had Red Rifle for Todd Pletcher, who won the Bowling Green last time out. You have Twilight Eclipse. I had Terry Finley here yesterday talking about this one. I love this horse, and I said, for the past couple of seasons. He had a grade 1 waiting on the resume. Sure enough, he got it earlier this year in the Man o' War, imagining for Shug McGahee. But the interesting entrant, obviously, Flintshire comes over from Europe.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that makes this race so interesting, as opposed to the Travers, which is interesting really for one reason only, is that there's this beautiful mix of speed, just off the pace horses, closers. So you really have to handicap this race and go like, okay, who gets the trip? I called Andre Faub. I talked to him the other day about Flintshire and asked him, you know, this horse has won. He's won 4 races. He's been second 8 times, though, out of 16 starts. So has he been unlucky, or is it just a product of the race? I mean, he's been beat by Trev twice. He got beat by Main Sequence in the Breeders' Cup. And he said, no, he's not been unlucky. He said he's a nice horse. He said it's just a product of the fact that he's run in all Group 1 and Grade 1 races as of late. And they're just tough races. He said in the race with Main Sequence, I asked him if he possibly made the lead too soon because he made the lead and got beat. And he said, no, Main Sequence outran him. He said he was just a better horse that day. But he said Flintshire loves the firm ground. So I think that's positive for him. It looks like we're going to have firm ground.
Maybe
for
you'd have
him.
to assume that's why they chose coming to Saratoga.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's also one of the reasons why I said, are you excited about coming back for Breeders' Cup at Keeneland? He said, we're going to watch the weather. And if we get a lot of rain in Lexington at that time, which we can, he might not come. But certainly he's here for the firm ground. And if you look back on some of his races over softer footing in Europe, where he's run second in some Group 1 races, I think he fits with these. He would be my top pick. I always want to see him in the flesh, though, Seth. So he's a horse I'm going to want to see in the flesh, make sure that he's shipped well, has held his weight well. But I think the race sets up for him, but it's such a good race.
Yeah.
I mean, Twilight Eclipse, any number of these horses, I think if you wanted to make a case for him, you could. Messi has a chance to step up to that class. He's often 2 wins at lower levels. Who do you like in there, by the way?
I'm a big fan of Twilight Eclipse, but boy, Flintshire, I mean, you alluded to it already. A couple of second-place finishes to Trev, including the ARC last year. I liked him in the Breeders' Cup last year off that second to Trev. Trev is just phenomenal for folks who don't follow international racing. You finish second to that one, you're a pretty good horse. So Twilight Eclipse, Flintshire, I haven't put down my final picks yet, but I'll probably go in that.
Sounds like you're biased towards Twilight Eclipse.
Yeah,
just a little bit.
You got to love horses, hard knockers like that.
Absolutely.
You know, 6 years old and still. I mentioned when I had Terry Finley, in relation to that, it's good to have a horse around that long. And last weekend on the Sunday show, we showed the replay. How about Ben's Cat and King Leather? You know, you're a 9-year-old multi-millionaire. You got to love those kind of horses.
Absolutely. And, you know, how about King Leatherberry getting into the Hall of Fame this year, too? I love
first
that.
Shot. For years and years, he's not on the ballot, and then first shot, he's in.
Yeah, so for 2 old classics. And, as you know, he could be a stand-up comedian. He's so hilarious when he did his acceptance speech at the Hall of Fame. He's just hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, nice to have those horses around.
Absolutely. And finally, you guys will kick things off really early in the broadcast on Saturday with the Forego, a Grade 1 event. And we had Tony Dutra on with us the other morning. And I think coming out of the Vanderbilt, the big beast. Going into the Vanderbilt, I thought his numbers were a little light because I do use the numbers when I handicap, but then he bounced that number up. And really, under the wire, I thought the big beast was the winner. But geez, Stone Street, everything's going right for them, certainly.
Yeah, and Rockfall's a nice horse. So,
but I think on Saturday, I think the big beast, we have Saludos Amigos in there, Private Zone, Wildcat Red. This race is loaded.
Yeah, I think the big beast and Private Zone are certainly the horses to beat. Saludos Amigos, as you mentioned, but a sleeper to me is this Tarmarcus. This is a horse who's only had 1 U.S. start, and it wasn't a bad race. I mean, that was in the Metropolitan Mile, and he got beat by Honor Code. Private Zone was third in that race. I think it's a little further than he wants to run, that mile distance, shortening back up to the 7 furlongs, making it his second U.S. start. And I've got some interesting stats here for you, by the way, and this kind of goes together. You know, a lot of people say Baffert doesn't do well here at Saratoga. Well, I beg to differ. If you look at his stats, every other trainer in the Travers race, he wins at a 21% clip. He's in the money 52% of the time. The only one who has a better stat than that is Keith DeSormo, who's only started 8 horses here. So he's won with 2 of them. He wins at a 25% clip. But aside from that, he's got a better win percentage than everybody else in the race at Saratoga, unless you get down to graded stakes races. Then when you get down to graded stakes races, he wins at a 14% clip. But guess who wins at a phenomenal clip in graded stakes races is Kieran McLaughlin, who's got this Tarmarcus in here. So I think he's got him in a good position, and he's, you know, the second start in the United States that he could be sort of of a sleeper in there.
Yeah, and Kieran's just having a phenomenal season. And speaking of big performances, how about Jess's Dream on Monday?
Yeah, that was, and the whole race you think, well, he's not going to get it. He's not going to get it. Wait a second.
I said when we talked about that race yesterday, I said, coming around the far turn, I thought, oh, that's too bad. He's not going to turn out to be too much.
Right, yeah.
And then,
looks like he's not all that.
Yeah, wow. And then the phenomenal run. All right, before we let you go, I want to hit on a couple other topics. I mentioned at the top, you are representing Starlight Ladies, the kind of female-centric offshoot of Starlight Racing. Going to pull up, going back to August 15th, the Adirondack, Tanasa, who is a Starlight Ladies runner, off of the career debut. This was only the second start. I used her that day as my top pick, and we're going to watch Tanasa run a hard luck second here. As I thought she was going to come back on the rail, and people will watch. She's on the rail there, and looks like she's going to be beaten and will eventually. But you think about mid-stretch, oh, she's going to come back, and then just under the wire, the other horse starts to pull away a little bit under the wire.
Seth,
Boy, she's nice.
This is one of the reasons why I like to look at horses in the paddock and why I don't like to look at horses in the paddock. Because when I saw this filly, Just Wicked, this Tappet filly who beats us, I said, yeah, I did not need to see that filly because she looked like a winner in the paddock. So the filly Just Wicked is definitely a nice filly who beat her. And so when it was all said and done, I thought Tanasa ran a hard race. She fought. It was a game effort on her part, and I thought she got beat by a better horse that day. This Just Wicked is even going to want more ground, I think. Tanasa's going to find a spot that's an ideal distance for her, but she's a nice filly to have in the barn, and it's nice to have the horses with both partnerships.
And Eskin for Money, also a Starlight Ladies horse, and she's been a good stakes performer this year. Second last weekend in the Monmouth Oaks. Talk a little bit about the mission of Starlight Ladies.
So it's Star Ladies. We've got Starlight, and then we've got Star Ladies. It's okay. But so it's an all-female partnership, and we have all fillies. And so ideally, we would like to have maybe 7 or 8 fillies. Right now, we've got 5 fillies in the partnership. Actually, 10 altogether. We had 5 the first year. This is going to be the third year, so we bought 5 the second year. And as you know already with Starlight and with Star Ladies Racing, we don't sell pieces of a horse. We sell pieces of that crop, that year's crop. So we accept new partners and commitments anytime between July and September. But in September, when we're done buying the yearlings, our partnerships close. And so we could probably use a couple more ladies in Star Ladies just so that we could get that number up to 8 fillies instead of the 5 or 6 that we have. But Starlight Racing is pretty well established at this point. They've been around for a long time, and we've got about 12 partners in Starlight Racing. We're able to buy the number of horses that we want there, and we actually have a pretty good bloodstock agent. I'm going to be biased when I tell you this. In Frank Brothers, who my husband, and used to train horses, and he's been doing that with Starlight and Star Ladies Racing.
And clearly doing a very good job, because Starlight has become one of the prominent owners on the American
Starlight
racing
did a good
scene.
job before they had Frank Brothers. So they've had a successful approach to what they do for a long time. But we're happy to be part of the team.
And you have contact information on the website, so if folks go to like Google and type in
just
Starlight,
starlightracing.com.
You'll find it, and some
Thanks.
contact information if you want to find out more. But again, it looks like a lot of fun. And we had both Dale Romans and Terry Finley yesterday talked about syndicates and partnerships and how it's good to jump in fractionally, and they talked also about it's more than just the racing. It's also the social aspect is a big part of it. Particularly up here at Saratoga, go on the backstretch, and you're in the paddock, but there's some real camaraderie and friendships built up.
Absolutely. And just to plug just horse racing and partnerships right now instead of one exclusively, the Jockey Club has created a great website in ownerview.com. So anybody who's interested in getting into partnerships, go to ownerview.com, and then you can click on syndicates up at the top, and each syndicate you click on, it gives you the profile and tells you like kind of what their business model is. And maybe, it really helps you narrow down what you're looking for, because we get a lot of people, I get emails and phone calls from people who say, like, I want to put $5,000 up and get into a partnership. And then I have to say, well, our partnership doesn't really work that way. But you can go to ownerview.com and you can find out exactly what's going to be the fit for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Terry made it yesterday. All these partnerships have different kind of missions, and they're focusing on different types of horses and whatnot. So it's good to find the one that's the fit for you.
And there's some that are just for New York racing. So if you're just like, I just want New York breds, there's some on that website.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right, before we let you go, certainly want to give you a shot to push the book, which came out a few years back, but I checked your website, still available. Inside Track, an Insider's Guide to Horse Racing. I see it's the second edition.
Yeah, well, it needed some updates. Gary Stevens was retired in the first edition, and So there were some updates that needed to be added to it. But yeah, Seth, it's a book. When I started covering horse racing, I realized that there was this tremendous gap between the people who knew the sport and the people who were trying to learn the sport. And it's a very difficult sport to try to explain in one fell swoop. Like, it's not like going to a baseball game where you can just go like, okay, and now I get it, right? Granted, there's a lot of inside baseball stuff that you don't get. But with horse racing, you need to know more than the basics to be able to bet on the races. And so I wrote this book with each chapter being a standalone chapter. So if you do not care about where jockeys come from, don't read that chapter. If all you want to know is about how to bet, read that chapter. If your wife wants to know what to wear to the races, read that chapter. So every chapter is a standalone chapter so that you can learn about what you want to learn about and then get rid of the rest. But I will say to people who they're already horse racing fans, and you get people who come into town and they don't know that much about horse racing, it's a great book to have in your house so that you don't have to spend your entire afternoon coaching them. So that was one reason why it was written.
And there's the cover on the screen, available Amazon. If they go to your website, there's a link to make the purchase.
Yeah, DonnaBrothers.com. Easy.
So it's available out there, and again, highly recommended. Donna, we appreciate the visit. Congratulations to you and NBC on a great Triple Crown season, and good luck going forward on Saturday and through the Breeders' Cup. You guys do a great job. Appreciate the visit this morning.
Seth, you do a great job too, so thank you, and I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate watching your show every day.
All right, thank you. Donna Brothers from NBC, Star Ladies Racing, and much